Let me welcome you to the wonderful experimental production that is the live watch party for Kamala Harris. Let me just tell you how wonderful this is, how inviting it is. John Davis, who was the coach of the debate team, is going to be here hosting this whole event where we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris, the debate team, the experience that is Howard University. We're going to be talking about all of those things today. And you're going to get to do it while we're watching the debate. We are your TV companion. We expect that you're going to have it on your television in the room, and then we're going to be there watching it with you. You're going to get to hear John comment on that. If anything happens crazy, we're going there. And John is going to be available to comment on all of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me get John. Let me get John here in the.
I see the just joined the call as well. Can you hear me, Omari? Omari, are you on mute?
Okay, so let me see. This is why I'm glad we're doing this because I still see me. I want to, and I want it to be. Oh, I want to go, John. Okay, I'm getting it. Oh, we got it.
I do see your face on the
I'm reclaiming the
on the
host.
screen. Right. I think that I just admitted Omari. I don't know where he went, but a notice popped up on my screen that Omari is here. I did admit he's not speaking, so
On video, we need the video. Start video, please.
8:30. We should be fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, so here we go. John,
Yes.
let me see if I should join you.
Can you bring me up on this, Mario? I don't see on the live side. I don't see it being streamed in because I'm looking at you, looking at your monitor.
I'm trying to just get Omari off the screen. Uh,
He's on.
I'm just trying to get.
Bring him on.
I'm just trying to get something.
Well, now I'm out to,
Yeah, no, this is me. I'm just having a real problem here. I'm trying to share. I guess I'm trying to share this screen. But which way? This is why we don't have to worry about anybody coming in till 6.
well, remember, we were gonna start 30 minutes early, but you could.
Yeah, I'm trying. I want to put you here. You're first of all, what are we sharing? Sharing. Exactly. So my screen, I'm sharing everything. I just don't understand why I don't have John stop video. Omari, I asked Omari for video. Are we waiting for your video, Omari? We're waiting your video. Omari Bakari, we're waiting your video.
I'm still, I got a blank screen now. No longer your home screen.
I'm trying to see why that is that. Why is we not showing John?
I see your picture moving around.
I don't understand what I'm not doing. I'm not sure what I'm not doing. Hold on, if I want to stop share. I don't want to share anymore.
What's that? Have now Pelosi's video on the screen.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to share that. Hold on, I just don't know if I'm supposed to. Okay, hold on. I think I know what's wrong. I'm in the wrong thing. Zoom meeting, Zoom workplace. So here's the Zoom workplace. So let the view, gallery view. This is not what we're streaming, showing.
Now you're there's not.
Oh, you see something?
Not just you. You're in the corner in the little
Oh,
empty,
yeah, okay.
picture.
Yeah, yeah.
It's still a photo. It's still a photo of Pelosi's documentary.
What I'm having a problem only because uh I'm not understanding why it's not streaming this. That's what I'm not understanding to me. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, see, John, I'm glad we're here, but you see, this is the shit that was gonna drive. See what I'm saying? What I'm saying this is what was gonna drive me crazy. This is what I was afraid of. But we got to hear, John. We're here. We're here.
Can you on in the line?
I've asked to start video. We've said it on the broadcast. Let me call him on the phone. How about that? And say, dude, can you start the broadcast? Now you change the angle.
Hey, Mario.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm waiting to leave that in the room.
You're in the room. I keep sending you messages saying start your camera. You getting any of those messages?
No, well, I'm just waiting to get an email.
Can you hear the audio?
No, I think we need to.
Oh, see, I don't know what you're doing. Because you should be. All I can say is that, admin, maybe you're not logged in as.
Well, yeah, on the phone.
Okay, now there's somebody admin guest. Okay, but Omari Bakari, who's that? Is that just one of our friends? Hi there. Okay, that's just one of our friends. I'm gonna remove them now. Okay, so now I'm gonna put Victor in. So Amari, I don't know I can't. You got to fix that on your end.
I was in on the phone when you called. I think it bugged me up, huh? It's asking me to join you on the computer.
We're all in there. John, check your angle again. You had it right. Now it's got 2 inches of 2 feet of space above your head. Or move up like you were, or change your position back to where you were, John. There you go. There you go. Well, there you go. That's the right position. We still waiting on Omari. I got Omari on the phone.
I'm trying to get in the room.
No, you're not. No, you're not. There's no request for you to join. So whatever you're doing, stop it and redo it again.
Let me do it on the phone, right?
All right, bye.
We'll see.
Good luck. Good luck.
Hey, it's Victor.
Hey, there he goes.
How you doing, sir?
And look at that. Look, see, he already brought the handkerchief, brought the glasses already, and backing up, going into my closet already, man. Damn.
Oh my God. You know, my now I need to, of all things, I need to plug my phone into something with these short ass recharging cords for these apples.
Hey,
Right.
Vic,
Yes, sir.
I told John to use his old computers as a monitor. If
Yes,
that would really
absolutely.
help him.
Yeah.
If he puts his old computer behind the phone and logs it into the broadcast, then he'll be able to see. Because
Yeah.
he does when he does it on the phone, he doesn't recognize we're all using monitors. You're sitting there in front of a computer
And
with the phone and everything.
be prepared for sometimes a delay in the feed.
Yeah.
No, I
Right
see that
now,
for
there's
sure.
a delay, but we're all synced up and
Right.
it's working well.
Yep.
So okay. So it I guess
We still
we're
have time. Let's work out. So everybody watching, you have to understand the nature of this. This is a momentous occasion. We've got wonderful people trying to do this amazing technology, to do something that's tremendously exciting.
was that a
These are
doorbell?
folks who were with Kamala in the past. John Davis is a wonderful person to tell us about the stories about Kamala. He was the coach of the debate team. Howard Professor of the Year 1 year, twice Professor of the Year. I say it all the time because I'm impressed as hell about it. Twice Howard
Hey,
Professor of the Year at George Mason. If we could get Omari to get his orientation up right,
your orientation is wrong on your phone there, Omari. But you know, we see you finally, my brother.
okay, we can bring his mic in. So
Yay!
this is us
Yay!
getting us together. So hey, John.
Yeah. Hey. You know what? Let me just riff a little bit. And we'll just go from there. And since this is live, and you know, this is how it works. So this is the first of my effort, my collaborative efforts with these wonderful brothers, Victor Allen, and of course, Dr. Mario Hemsley with packstereo.com, been on Roku and been broadcasting and putting out conscious music and messages for years now. And so I'm happy to collaborate with you too, for sure. I'm happy to have worked on putting this collective together. Omari, good to see you, brother. Always a pleasure, right? Like,
Likewise.
so if you could do one quick thing, Omari, just you know, on the side, reach out to Bob, tell him to go ahead and join the link. I think if we were to just have him, if no one else, we could really kind of jump in. Now, you know, obviously the debate is getting started here in 15 minutes. And so we could use the next 15 minutes to just kind of like set the tone for what's going to happen over the 90 minutes of the debate and the 15 minutes prior to it. Just to set the record straight, I was the captain of the debate team when Kamala Harris joined in her freshman year. My coach was Albert Wynn. Albert was actually what happened was the year that Kamala joined the team. Yes, I was the captain then. Also, however, Albert Wynn decided to run for Congress that same year, so he left being the coach of the team. Oh, I see my man Bob is calling me. Why don't you give him a call, Omar? He's calling me right now. Um, so anyhow, as I was saying, uh, Albert was the coach of the team and subsequently went to win in a congressional race in Prince George's County, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., one of the suburbs of D.C. And so he wasn't actually her coach. And we spoke in anticipation of this event. And, you know, I invited him. In fact, we talked this evening. And he was saying that since he wasn't actually her coach, he didn't have the same kind of insights. And I give him a pass on that. That's cool. One of the things I'd like to do is to talk a little bit more about just kind of the legacy that we were part of and that we became part of, as opposed to exactly which specific memory I have of Kamala on the team, or specific activity or a specific competition that she went to. I'm gonna just a couple other things real quick, Mario. One is that we invited a few people, right? Lita Rosario, who was on the team at the time. She's a very close, good friend of Kamala Harris. She is actually hosting her own watch party, and what her watch party for their, the invitees of that watch party have to pay $1,000. It's a fundraiser, so I appreciate the fact that she has work to do relative to this event tonight. Then we have Walter Woods and his wife Sharon, and Sharon Allen, and they may join, but because of some other things that are going on, it might not be the best time for them to join. So what we did was we made an effort to reach out to the folks that were on the team at the time. And as you can see with myself and Omari, I mean, it was a long time ago. We're gray. We're old men. At the time we were in college, right? So we were like an undergrad. That was for me, it started in 1978, 79, 77. So we're talking about a long time ago, obviously. I'm coming up on damn near 50 years since undergrad. So, sometimes memories get a little shady and things of that nature. But debate has a way, man, because of the intensity of the activity, kind of hard to forget, like at least some of the things that you did. And so I'm happy to talk about some of them and have some memories with you, Omari, and Bob, since we were actually there on the team. In fact, Omari, why don't you start us off, man, just by talking about, some of your initial thoughts when you joined the team. Where were things at the time? Give us your perspective of that, and then I can kind of add some color.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Yep.
You guys hear me okay? So what I remember, we had some grueling practices and practice sessions. I think at the time, half of us were veterans who had all met in the Veterans Affairs Office. And through them, I met Bob Walters, and Bob, I think, introduced me to John. And so we were this group of guys who had Eagles. We were veterans, and we thought we were amongst the top at Howard's campus. And so when you add JD, who came to Howard as the National High School Debate Champion, and he recruited another young man, Gordon Knox, who was, at the time he was recruited, I think he was the high school debate champion as well. So our practice sessions, we practiced beating up on each other because, that was the temperament of what these debates were going to be like, that we were going to be beating up on each other. And I won't forget when Lita joined the team. Lita's from Boston, very attractive young lady. And I thought, well, she's too cute to be effective on this team because everybody's getting beat up. And Lita proved, to be as tough as the rest of us. And she went out and bought Kamala to kind of, even things up a little bit, bring some more women on the team. And I have to admit, coming out of the service, I was a bit chauvinistic. And I just didn't see the point of, as beautiful as these two women were, I just didn't see the point of them being on the debate team because they were going to get beat up. John was a beast then, and he's a beast today. And he was beating everybody up. If you didn't have the argument, if you didn't know what the topic was, you were in trouble. And I can remember, I think the debate topic was whether or not the U.S. should continue to provide military support in the Namibian desert. And we did hours and hours of research. I mean, we got to the point where we looked at every country and we saw what the size of their military was and how much money they were spending and how much it would cost to continue to provide support in Namibia. And those were grueling practice sessions. And I remember I after getting slapped around a little bit, I just said, well, look, I'll just do the research. Let me help put the arguments together. I don't need to be on the front line to get this punishing beating. And so what I remember was when when Lita brought Kamala around, I was like, I guess they can hang, but I just didn't see the point. It just seemed like they were going to get beat up too.
Well, you know what,
He,
man? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you a story about that, right? So,
yeah, he didn't want to. I just let me just finish, Davey. I just
yeah,
thought
yeah. Sorry. Go
these
ahead.
young ladies weren't tough enough to hang with us. Turns out both of them proved us wrong.
Oh,
Wow.
totally. And let me just tell you this, right? The forum is called the Forum Debating Society. Started at Howard in 1919, and that was the first debating society exclusively for women. And so Howard has a 100-year history, man, more of training sharp, Howard women in the art of debate and argumentation and oratory. And amongst the things that, was kind of like our style, if you will, while we competed. And I'd love to talk a little bit about some of that competition, because there was a story actually about Kamala having a little bit of an incident with the debaters from Navy at one tournament that I didn't see it happen, but I do know about it. But anyways, we were a team that was focused still on eloquence. That eloquence matters in the Black community, to using language and words as weapons. And so, this was part of our armor. So that was kind of the thing that we wanted to always convey and always have working for us, because in a tournament you win on argument and you win on speaking ability. And so I always felt like there were two shots at coming home with the trophy by being articulate. And so the rule for me was, understand the mechanics as good as your opponent, and then add your personality, and you win every time. And so if you can debate as good as Harvard or as good as the next team, that you can answer every question, you know how to raise an objection in a courtroom, same sort of scenario. If you know the mechanics of the profession that you take on and you add in your personality, you wind up winning, because the majority of folks that were in competition against us, the majority of those folks were mimicking each other. And you see it today, right? Like one style becomes the favorite style, and every single person wants to speak like that. A lot of folks just aren't willing to put their personality on top of the mechanics of whatever that profession is. And that to us was always the winning style. And I think that's how we wound up being as good as we were throughout these competitions. And I see that we're about 5 minutes before the tournament, or should I say, Kamala's debate starts with former president. I give him only that much credit, that he was the president of the United States. I don't feel like he represents the kind of office, the kind of conduct in office that we should have, but that's my personal view. What we're going to try to do today, and what I'm going to be asking of you three gentlemen, in addition to anyone else that tends to join, is to sort of think about what was said, how that fits into the context of what we know. Does it come across as something that's going to be effective in our community? So let's also provide a little bit of substantive color to what we're hearing in the debate, in addition to occasionally sort of peeling off and giving you some context about Howard's illustrious debate history. And so one other little bit of housekeeping news. A woman named Annie Linsky, who is the White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, called me a few days ago and wanted some information. And she was writing an article about Howard's debate team and Kamala's role there. Annie might be joining this call at some point to get some of our feedback or to hear what our thoughts might be relative to what's being said during the debate. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know that we have some listeners on the channel that are queuing in, and my hope is that our listeners will also be willing to send in a request, or should I say make a chat or send in a comment And my good friend and colleague Victor will be monitoring those feeds in social media or on our channel, our websites, those kinds of platforms to see whether or not there's information that you can share with us that we can share with you, or at least get an opinion, get my opinion on some of the things that are shared here. So I just wanted to do that little bit of housekeeping with you. Omari, do you remember when the debate team sort of pivoted towards student government and kind of got involved in politics? Because I think that was a critical sort of event that happened with Kamala in her freshman year, and that after having a pretty bruising year of practice rounds, and even I think that they did go to a varsity, I'm sorry, like that, a novice tournament as freshmen. At the end of the year, we had a plan and did a real pivot into student government. I wound up being the campaign manager for a lot of that effort. But what's your thoughts? I mean, do you feel like Kamala, when she chose to run for office, that was a pivotal moment in her? We don't know. I don't know whether you knew her beforehand, but at Howard and since Howard, your thoughts about what happened there. I know you were intimately involved in the student government and politics on campus at the time. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I didn't realize Kamala was going to run for, I think she ran for president of the School of Liberal Arts.
Or it was either the president or a member of the Liberal Arts Student Council, one of those offices.
So what I remember is that when we all decided that we were going to run again, I thought we all had some pretty big egos at that time, and we treated being on the debate team like we had some kind of elitist status. But when we decided to mount that campaign, it was the year after you had ran for office, and
with Jeanine Rouzan, right?
And then we had got the bad press, and it seemed like that bad press tempered war, an ongoing battle with us and the Hilltop, and particularly the incoming editor, which was Isabel
Wilkerson, right?
So,
Right.
so,
Wilkerson, you want to tell people who she is, just for those that aren't familiar?
yeah, so Isabel has written two books recently. Both of them have. I think of the first one, she won the New York Times Writer of the Year. And the second one, Cast, excuse me, which was made into a film. But that book also got her a lot of fame.
Yeah, I think she got a Pulitzer for the first one, The Warmth of Other Suns, right?
Right.
But she was the editor of the newspaper at the time, and the political reporter was a guy named Joseph Perkins, who was he ultimately wound up working for the Wall Street Journal, and is a very conservative reporter. And he did, sort of do a nice tap dance on our case, and it really did lead to the strategy, which was that let's go ahead and run for all of these different student government offices, and in that way we could not only fund our own campaign. And I think I just heard a doorbell, so there might be somebody trying to chime in.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you and make this announcement. Some of the participants have had some trouble getting into the room, and we're acknowledging that. Please make sure you take a look for John's latest email that he did. We did some rerouting of things prior to the broadcast, unfortunately, but we think that we can accommodate everybody. That's Walter.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
great.
Walter.
Oh, good. There you
So
go.
I'm gonna ask
Excellent.
Walter to unmute his microphone.
Fantastic. You're muted now.
Okay, so did I unmute?
Hey, Walter,
How's it
there
going?
you are, brother.
All right, I
Hey,
didn't want to
there's my
be
friend.
anti-social, so I said, okay, at least let me chime in and
Yeah, brother.
say
Yes,
hello.
sir. Thank
Sharon's
you,
not
man.
showing her face; she's in the background. Say, you can say hi anyway. Just say hello.
Hi, Sharon.
Yeah.
How you doing, dear?
All
So
right.
nice to hear your voice after all these years. Good to see you too, Walter.
All right, thanks, man. I'm sorry. So I obviously It's something you all had in flow.
No.
We're
We
actually
just
talking about how we arrived at running for student government. How all of us who were participating on a debate team arrived
Right,
at the decision to take over student government the following year.
right. Well, we had enough vets on that team where we felt like we didn't have enough stuff to do. Also, like, what am I doing? I'm going to class 4 or 5 hours and I'm studying, and that's why some of us started doing the debate also to just kind of fill up schedule, have things to do.
mhm. No.
I
So
know that's
we
I know that's how I felt for a while anyway. It was like, shit, okay, I only got 15 hours in class and study. I got to get a job or something, do something with this time. Yeah.
did you get a scholarship from Albert?
Yeah.
Did he get?
Oh,
Yeah.
he didn't have to give me one because remember I was in the that honors program. My
Uh-huh.
cousin
Uh-huh.
who got me to come there told me about it. She said,
Uh-huh.
just get good grades the first semester. I got a 4.0 and
Mhm.
they put me on full scholarship.
There you go. There you
I'm
go.
trying to remember who the hell I met that was it you? I'm trying to remember who I met that even told me about the debate team.
Yeah.
That's an
You know,
interesting one there.
Omari, weren't you saying that you guys had talked during the the Veterans Office or something like that? That was
Yeah, I think it was Bob Walter.
Was it Bob? Okay.
Ladies and
All right.
gentlemen, the debate is starting and the participants are entering. Would you
oh,
like to
look, they're
see?
actually going to shake hands. Oh,
Okay.
she
Really?
walks over to him to shake his hand. Okay. These,
John,
Repeatedly
you want to
say is
change
their
the
number one
channel?
issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years,
I think
pay
she's
us
a little
back
nervous.
for all that we've done for the world.
Yeah.
And the
I think she's
tariff
a little
will be
nervous, but that was a
substantial
good
in some
answer.
cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums. And they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook. A bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Good response. I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Did he just say 100 million people died in 1917?
We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
Go back to your
case. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and
Oh, wow.
many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan. And it's like 4 sentences.
Don't react,
like
Kamala.
run, spot, run.
Don't stop looking at
4
his ass.
sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only
Just like
president
Mexico
ever.
is going to pay
China
for
was
the
paying us
for the border
hundreds
wall.
of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else.
He's never
the people
bought
of
that
our country
in his life.
are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
Here
her
she
father's
goes.
a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country
Back
monthly,
to immigrants.
where it's,
Okay,
I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before,
That's
we'll talk
all
about
he can
immigration
talk
later.
about.
Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
Nobody
That's why I
say
did
that.
that, because that
is murder.
because they're radical. The Democrats are
Infanticide.
radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth.
He
It's
hasn't
execution,
answered
no
the
longer
question, of
abortion,
course.
because the baby is born.
Not on
is
his
okay.
position. Hasn't
And that's not
mentioned
okay with
anything.
me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio,
The people could vote?
somewhat liberal.
No. The Supreme
Kansas,
Court
the
voted.
vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not
Right,
actually
good.
a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, When Congress passes a bill to put back
She's
in
doing
place
great,
the protections
I think.
of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into
There is no
law.
nervousness
But
there.
understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your
Joe
miscarriages.
Biden,
I think the
I
American people believe
liked you.
that
But she
certain
needs to step in.
freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into
Oh
the
my
states,
God.
and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. He went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing,
Somebody's
this whole
audio.
idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to
That was me.
millions
I
and
hope she
millions of
jumped
people
in
that
on
had to
that.
pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and in asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they made a very negative decision on
for the last
IVF
couple
from
days.
the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and
No, you could
probably
not.
after birth. Just look at the former
Oh,
governor
for
of
fuck's
Virginia.
sake.
The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill,
Good.
which
Perfect
I
answer.
supported.
There you go.
And that bill would have put 1,500 more
Right.
border agents on the border to help those
Judges,
folks who are working there
prosecutors,
right now
everybody.
overtime,
Right.
trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that
Nice.
point, I want to get your
Well,
response.
I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing
that
them
was
in
a
a
good
different
one.
light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of
You're right.
politics. That's because
Right,
people
right.
want to take
My crowd's
the country
bigger than
back.
your crowd. Here
Our
we go.
country is being lost. We're a failing nation, and it
Oh,
happened
God.
3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United
I
States.
can't
And a
hear
lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because
What?
they're so embarrassed by it.
I can't hear you.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the
Oh,
cats.
oh,
They're
Lord.
eating.
See, this is why
They're eating the pets
I was
of the
borderline
people
tuning
that
in.
live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as
They're
far as
eating
the
the
reason they
dogs.
go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make
Why did
America
you
great
even
again.
go
It's a very
to the
simple
rally
phrase.
statement?
Make America great again.
Stay on
She's
the damn-
destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Okay.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit.
Keep going.
His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on
Except
immigration.
Joe
That's
Biden.
what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to the deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people
at
let
all,
in, and
right?
all over the world. Crime is
Let me
down
remind
all over the
everyone
world
that
except here.
John
Crime here
Davis
is
was
up and
the
through the
former
roof,
coach of
despite
the
their
debate team.
fraudulent statements
That's
that
part
they
of the
made.
reason why we're
Crime in this
joining
country is
perspectives and
through the roof,
insights
and we have a new
throughout
form
this
of crime. It's
broadcast.
called
Once again, thank
migrant
you, John.
crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
I
me,
didn't
the
quite
FBI
catch that.
They were
Catch
defrauding
that.
statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted
And
for
convicted, right.
national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries.
Yes, sir, of course.
But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Yes.
Vice President
Point well
Harris, thank
taken.
you.
Point
Excuse
well.
me.
Why put it off on it?
Was started by them against their political opponent, and I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to
Man,
the,
I hope she can
Attorney General
dive
of New
in
York,
on
to
this
the
one,
DA in New
because
York.
that's
Every
a
one
wrong
of those
line for him
cases.
to go down.
And then
Yeah, it
they
is.
say, oh,
Yeah, it is.
he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never
Go ahead,
happened in this
Kamala.
country.
Light
They
him up
used
on
it
this.
to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The
Right.
United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up
This
to the
ain't
American
Joe
people.
Biden. She is
Vice
whooping
President
his
Thank you.
ass.
Lindsay?
I'm
Vice President Harris,
Yes,
in your
you-
last
This ain't
run
Joe
for
Biden.
president.
No.
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized.
And that's
not me.
with all respect,
She weaponized.
Joe.
I probably took a bullet to
Very
the head
good, very
because
good.
of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We have a lot to
that
get
went
President Trump,
nowhere.
We have a
Shut
lot to
up.
get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that
Thank you.
we have got
Thank
to
you.
invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history
I just talked to a bunch
because
of
of an approach
millionaires
that
in
recognizes
Louisiana who are
that we
making money
cannot over-rely on
from the
foreign
fracking.
oil.
Yeah.
As it relates to my values,
It's a
let me
big
tell you,
business.
I grew up
I'm
a
telling you.
middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term.
She
My
has been
work
talking about
that is
her
related
plan.
to
She has
having
been very
a friend when I
specific
was in high
about
school who was sexually assaulted
his
by her stepfather.
deficiencies
And
and
my
his
focus
lies.
then
To
on
me, so
protecting
far,
women and children
there's
from
no.
violent
This is
crime
not
is
a
based
close
on a
debate.
value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will
It's like
end on
raw
day one.
meat, right?
Just
It
to finish
just
one
hit
thing,
all
so
of
important
the
in my
whistle
opinion.
Making up stuff.
So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying
How
our
am I
country.
going to be able to
Oil will be
unhear
dead,
this
fossil
stuff?
fuel will be dead. We'll go back to
know.
windmills, and we'll go back to solar,
You
where
can't
they
unhear
need
it.
a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis.
Why would you say
Mr.
we
President,
all
on
know?
January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer. that should have
Like
never,
5 days.
ever shot her. It's a
There was 4
disgrace.
cops that
But
died.
we didn't do
Yeah.
this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to
Here we
pour in?
go.
She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar.
Here we
She doesn't
go.
want to be
Back
called
to
the
this.
border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, "Oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet." That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world? not
Wait,
just
he
South
was in
America,
office then.
they're
What?
coming in from
I know.
all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not
He
go
said that
back.
yesterday.
Let's chart a
He
course
said it yesterday.
for the future and not go
In front of a whole
backwards to
rally
the
of people.
past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper.
She gotta
but they
press him
still
a little
bring it
bit
up,
down
just
'cause
like
he's
they
starting
bring
to lose.
2025 up. They bring
Exactly.
all of this stuff up.
Propaganda
Let me ask you
machine.
this. You talk about
Fox
Right.
the
propaganda
Capitol.
machine.
Why are we
I
allowing
would do exactly what you're
these
saying,
millions of
Walter.
people to come
Press
through
him
on the
because he's
southern border?
already
How come she's
losing
not
it.
doing
He's just
anything?
going to show
And I'll tell
more
you
of
what I
this
would do,
for the
and
rest
I would
of the
be very
debate.
proud to do it. I would say
Call him
we
a
would
racist.
both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see
I
her
just
go
call him a
down
racist.
to Washington, D.C.
you're
during
right.
this debate because
Something
I would just
like
call him a
that.
racist. Like, listen,
I
your
thought
conduct
I
constitutes
hope she would
a
at least
racist.
Go down
desecrate
to
and
Washington,
defecate,
D.C.
but
and let
she
her
missed
sign
that
a bill to
opportunity.
Because they
close up
did
the border.
defecate.
Because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
But
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics.
He has gone way
over
2 minutes.
That doesn't matter.
Him in
because we have to
back
solve the problem that we
control
have
of this
right now.
debate.
That's old news.
ABC.
And the problem that we have
Come
right
on.
now is we have a nation in decline.
He's been talking
and they
for
have
5
put
minutes.
it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you
Thank
heard
you,
the president
nothing.
there tonight.
What do
He
you
said
mean,
he didn't
thank
say
you?
that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden.
Kamala,
and
get
yourself.
him now.
But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man.
It was purely ego, right? He had to go to
Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole
Only thing he
world
wants to
blowing
respond
up?
to is,
3
"I'm a
years
good
ago,
guy."
it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump
And you're
back
going to
as
quote
president.
Viktor Orban,
They were
of
afraid
all
of him.
people,
China was afraid, and I
another
don't like to use the word
dictator.
afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most
Viktor Orban
respected,
is
most
the
feared
wrong
person
you want
is
to be
Donald
quoting.
Trump. We had no
Exactly.
problems when Trump was
Of
president.
all people,
But when
you
this
know how to
weak,
quote this
pathetic
guy.
man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes.
Good. Press him. Press him.
Because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand what's okay with it, but I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President
Is
Biden
that
has not been
feedback
able
on
to
my
break through
phone,
the stalemate.
Mario?
How
Do
would we
you hear
Well, let's
No, I
understand
hear
how we
nothing.
got here.
static?
On October 7th,
No?
No.
Okay, good.
Hamas,
All right, good.
a terrorist
No, I hear. I'm
organization,
hearing the static also.
You're getting the static?
1,200
Yeah, it's
Israelis.
pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Many of them young people who were simply
Did you get
attending a
static?
concert.
I
Women
hear a
who were
little bit,
horribly
just a little.
raped. And so absolutely, I said
This
then,
is
I
in the
say now,
broadcast.
Israel has
It
a right
could
to
be.
defend itself. We
It
would.
could be. Okay. All right.
And how it does so matters.
I don't want to. I
Because
don't want
it
to
is
mute it
also
just to
true,
see.
far too many
Don't.
innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that
She
this
let him off
war
the hook. She
must
should have
end.
responded to the
It
previous
must
question
end
before answering
immediately,
this one.
and the way it
She
will
should have
end
gone
is we need a
back and
ceasefire
talked
deal, and
about
we
him
need the
one more
hostages
time
out.
before going to the
And so we
foreign
will
policy
continue to
topic.
work around the clock on that.
It looks like she wanted
Work
to,
around
but
the
she's
clock, also understanding that
following
we
the
Yeah,
rules.
but
must chart a
you're right.
course for a
You're right,
two-state
Trisha.
solution.
That's
And
what you
in
have the
that
momentum.
solution,
Yeah.
there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and an equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone
What
into
are you talking
Ukraine
about?
and killed
He held back
millions
weapons
of
from
people
Ukraine.
when you add it
That
up.
was the
Far
whole-
worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke
She
under
was at a
Donald Trump.
She was in
Now
a
Iran
sorority
has
party.
$300
Can you use
billion
that one? I
because
don't
they took
know.
off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no
I
money
know.
for
I think she
Hamas or
was
Hezbollah
right,
or
but
any
that
of the
was
28
kind of like
different
to avoid Netanyahu.
spheres of terror, and they are
He
spheres
should
of
never have been
terror,
invited. It
horrible
was
terror.
Speaker
They had no
Johnson that
money.
invited
It
his
was a big
dumbass to come
story, and
anyway.
you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke.
No, I mean
Now
in
they're
the
a
sense
rich
of
nation,
him not
and now
addressing it.
what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll
Oh
get
my
the
goodness,
war
like-
with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant.
Yep.
It is well known he exchanged love
What he
letters
said.
with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that
His
these
bitch boy.
dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with
Please tell
have
people to
told me
believe me.
you are a disgrace. That is why we understand
towards
that we
him and
have
call
to have
him
a
a
president who is
disgrace.
not
That
consistently
is good.
weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate
Oh
from the
boy,
National
finally got a
Constitution
little
Center
commercial
right
break
in
here.
Philadelphia.
My
Back in-
goodness.
Yeah, I know. That's I'm like, who paid for the air now?
Yeah, yeah,
ABC News
yeah.
Yeah, because
presidential
that
debate
what they
will
went
continue
an hour
after
straight.
this.
Is that right?
It's only
Yeah.
2 commercials.
Yeah, they went.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went an hour.
hmm
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
so,
actually, they actually
This
threw a
year,
couple
C-SPAN
commercials.
celebrates
So
45
can
years
you
of governing
reduce the
Congress
volume
like
during
no
the
other.
commercial?
Since
Yeah.
1979.
Thank you, John.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Walter, what's your assessment? What you've seen so far?
My assessment is that it's pretty obvious about the who has the ability to think about what they need to do, what needs to be done, how to structure things, how to put in place programs. You know, she manages, even when he's able to bait her, to stick to the points and talk about the topics with specificity. Where he goes off on crazy tangents like eating cats and dogs in the streets and things like that. I just wish she could throw a little bit more in there about what the press has managed to avoid since Biden dropped out. The fact that he's 80, there's a good chance, one, he could wind up in jail, or two, he could die, and then Vance winds up being our president.
I'm thinking that some of what I mean, we would have been trying to get her to attack him
Right.
more personally. I know that would have been one of the things I would have tried to get her to do during this, and I suspect that
Right.
her handlers are, really trying to keep her in that lane because
Right. Right.
they don't want her to be too aggressive because when women are viewed as too
Right.
aggressive,
Right.
white guys tend to take it as an offense. And so she's playing to all these different audiences. But I got to say, it seems like she started out a little nervous, but really
Right.
got her stride.
Right.
And she's debating. She's hitting her points. Each time she spoke, she had 3 examples. She didn't go to
Right.
4 or 5 or
Right.
6.
No,
She wasn't
she's
rambling. She stopped on
right.
time. It seems like she's really did a good job in preparing this, and she sounds like she was a debater.
Exactly. That's about what I was about to say, John. She just didn't lose track of what what the point was that was made or the claim was made and the rebuttal, with specificity, to that. She didn't allow him to throw her off base with, the personal attacks and things like that. Yeah. Hopefully she will though. Hopefully within the next half an hour as she
I hope
builds,
so too.
she
I hope so
gets
too.
to throw a few more, like snide
a
type
little red
remarks
meat
and
our
whatnot.
way, right? Like, a little more red meat our way.
Yeah,
He's
and,
throwing mad red meat to his people. We're not getting as much. We're getting dignity.
It is, and there's some things that you can you can talk about. I'm glad, I wasn't going to listen. I'm glad I did. I saw a couple of things. I think I'm going to try to send some things into her campaign in terms of talking about kind of specific things about, how a lot of he talks about these cartels and things like that, but they come in, they're setting up a lot of times on what they view as the fringes of the Black community and things like that, where they
That's true.
places
That's
where
true.
they think they can get away with crime and not be prosecuted. In the same way, I think she could probably use a bit of that in there because I know coming from California, she dealt with that a lot.
Yeah.
Those criminal organizations that come
Absolutely.
in and set up in places where they think they can prey on people to sell drugs and what. Yeah.
John, you got to tell us a little bit about Walter's history with the debate. I mean, just a short, quick one, okay?
Sure. So
I'm
Walter's a
so
beast, right?
curious
Let me
to
tell
know
you.
more about
So
Walter.
Walter was one of the fastest, sharpest, smartest, most wicked debaters Howard's ever had, right? And Walter would sort of go between partners. Sometimes he was with Aziz and others, but he was kind of like busy. So he was on the team, a beast, and would almost kind of like you use him as an attack dog. As a coach, I know Albert would like, okay, we want to put this team against that team. So when we were doing matchups, Walter was always one that would win when we did the matchups because we had varsity teams.
Yeah.
You did. We had these
but it's
varsity
funny
teams.
because John, I packed up my gear once, and I knew you and I forgot who your part. Sterling had won. I packed up my gear, and then they called my name, and I'm like, "Oh
that's
my
right.
God,
That's
what
right.
the hell?"
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No,
And
Walter was a beast.
Yeah.
And Mario, Walter selected me as a campaign manager when he ran for the Houston president, and at the same time we had a slate where every office damn near across the entire school were somehow connected to the debate team. And then what that did, it allowed us to have an agenda that I think is unmatched in terms of the kind of people that we brought in. We had, we had Medgar Evers' wife. We had Malcolm X's wife, Martin Luther King's wife. We had women forums. We had Toni Morrison. We had so much focusing on Black women that year, and that was in the that was in the early '80s. We were focused on Pan Africanism. We had the homecomings were about Ujima and Umoja. We brought in Peter Tosh and Black Uhuru as the groups. We could have gone in the pop direction, but we stayed true to the sort of the cultural milieu and the message that we were trying to convey to the student body. And I believe that had an impact on Kamala. She ran for office that year
we did
and
have
won
Cheryl
like the rest
Lynn
of us
and,
did.
Now we did have Cheryl Lynn and Donald Byrd though.
We
and
did.
that same,
We did.
that,
Well, Donald Byrd was like a member of fine arts. I mean, he was an instructor at the School of Fine Arts, and so
But you
also
did
had,
a lot. John did a great deal of having very broad appeal with the way he managed the campaign. That was a lot. I do remember having to do a hell of a lot of work to reduce the budget for things he did, like homecoming.
I was spending some serious money with homecoming.
He was, yeah.
You gotta remember, we brought in
throwing
Gil
some
Scott
dollars
Heron
out there.
and Bobby Seals.
Oh, that's right. Gil
Yeah,
Scott,
you're
Bobby
right,
Seals,
right. Bobby Seals and
Gil Scott Heron,
Farrakhan and
Farrakhan.
We also had the president of Tutu, Bishop Tutu.
Did we bring in a couple African presidents too?
Well, we met with Robert Mugabe. We had lunch with
Robert Mugabe. Excuse me, that's who it was. It was Robert Mugabe.
Yeah,
right.
I think one of the interesting things that we did too was
she was there, with Robert Mugabe. Go ahead.
We had when we took over UWOP and managed to get the whole budget that year. We had everybody from all the different schools and the Hilltop come to us every time they wanted to spend a penny. They had to submit.
You're right. You're right. It was, but you know what though, man? I thought after that, Greg, I saw how a lot of the student organizations ran after that, how they put their programs together, how they did their homecomings and things like that. I thought we provided we did a lot of stuff that we did right and we did wrong too, but we provided a really good blueprint.
At the beginning of the year, I don't know if you guys remember, we had George Jefferson come in and do that leadership training.
You had him right. We had him come in to help us. We had him from a business perspective, how to organize. You're right. You're right. We did that during the summertime before we started actually being engaged. Things.
Right.
But that was.
But I think the interesting part about our campaign is that we made all of those political campaign posters by hand. Red, black, and green markers.
Did you drive up? Wait a minute. Did you drive up? Right. Remember, I had my mother. She was an artist.
Yes.
Remember the ones that I had her.
Right. You went up to Atlantic City and she hooked us up.
And she did all of those posters, and we hung them from the ceiling in those buildings so they couldn't take them down.
Right.
That was. Wait a minute. Do you all remember this one? And I don't even know if I should say this. On the day of the election, the Hilltop published a paper saying the other candidate was the favorite.
Yep.
Yeah, and we went around and we picked up papers.
Yes.
And we did what we did with them. So that they never saw them.
We destroyed papers, and Omari and I went into the Hilltop offices.
Right.
Fighting with the Hilltop. Historic. Fighting with the Hilltop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I found that particular issue, Walter. I have a PDF right now.
You found it?
The Hilltop. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Look, I guess it's in the same space. Remember, we took and we were all we were panicking, and I said, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we just move the papers under the stairwell or something like that? So it'll take them a little bit longer.
Mario, we had a relationship with the printer.
Right.
And because we had to pay the invoices for the Hilltop, so
Yep.
we knew where the papers were printed.
Oh man,
They
that
told
was
us when they would be delivered.
that was
We did all
hilarious.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
That was, I mean,
God.
it's funny when you, it's really funny
Oh
when
my
you think
God.
about it. But man, look, we all got that was, I was telling Sharon earlier. I was saying, you know what, man, some of these people, they all do the distance learning, but they man, they don't get what they miss in terms of like debate teams and student government. The different kind of learning activities you get from doing that, man.
That's right. That is.
I mean, it wasn't,
right.
because when you think about it, a few $100,000 right now doesn't seem like much back then. But back then, that was, that was a little bit of money. And
That's
then
right.
I think we would have, first want to start doing those international concerts and whatnot from, the people from different, especially, the Caribbean or the African artists and whatnot. Yeah.
Hey, Jay.
Ladies and gentlemen, just want to remind everyone that this broadcast is actually something that was organized by the HU3. It's featuring Howard University attendees and graduates. We have John Davis, who is the former coach. We have Walter Woods, who was also a member, and Omari Bakari. Right now, the debate is going into its final 15 minutes. So I think we might say back over. But I want to remind everyone that at the end of the debate, we actually have the opportunity to extend the broadcast as long as we want, so that if John and Walter and Omari want to continue a conversation, we certainly will be able.
Women, now put John back on there though. I want to see if John still has the waves, the amount of waves, the amount of waves that I remember.
I got it.
From back in the all right.
I still got them.
Okay.
They're a little thinner, but
thinner
they're still
now.
there.
And look, John, I stopped doing my fade anymore. I'm afraid to cut hair anymore, man. I just let it grow now. Yeah.
I feel you, brother.
Yeah.
No,
All
man.
right,
And
I'm gonna start that share.
Yeah, let's go ahead and listen in.
All
on
right.
these last few
You
minutes.
guys are
Great.
funny though.
All right.
But man, that's wonderful. That is wonderful.
All right. You guys getting the volume on that?
$300 million
There you
a
go.
day.
Good.
We were
We're
paying
good.
for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker.
That's
Even
a good
his
thing.
national
She's calling
security
him weak.
advisor
That
said
gets under
it was
his
a
skin.
weak, terrible
He's used
deal.
that
And here's how
phrase
it
many
went down.
times.
He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew
Another
it.
lie.
The agreement said you have to do this,
He
and
said
they didn't
85
do
billion?
it. They didn't
Yes,
do
he
it.
did.
The agreement
Most documented
was
lie in
terminated
history
by
of
us
mankind.
because they didn't do
sorry?
what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
and
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this
Here,
country.
look.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
Nail his
I
ass.
think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who
Call him
has
a racist.
consistently, over the course of his career,
Been a racist.
attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Just say
You
the
know, I
word.
do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in
Yeah,
common than
please,
what separates
say-
us, and we don't want
Say
this
the
kind
word,
of approach
Kamala.
that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land, he owned land, he owned
Slumlord.
buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times
Yep.
calling for the execution
The execution of those
5
brothers.
young
That were
black and
innocent, too.
Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park Five.
Yes, there you go.
Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution.
As a private
this is the
citizen,
same
he did that.
individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want
Call him a
better
racist.
than that.
Say it.
Want better than this. Want someone
They
who
want better
understands
than
as
a
I do, I
racist
travel
as
our
a president.
country. We see in each other
That becomes
a
the news
friend.
tomorrow.
We see
Make
in
it.
each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said.
Black.
Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person
you piece
that
of
has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is.
That's all his supporters need
Their
to hear.
oil policies, every single policy.
That's all they
And
gotta
remember
hear.
this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst
50 years ago
inflation we've ever
overseas,
had.
like
A
6.
horrible economy because
Yeah.
inflation has made it so bad,
6,
and she can't get away with that.
8,
I
8.
want to
Yeah.
respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what
Good.
is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to
This is good.
strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our
Good.
plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan.